Hello, my fellow comic book collectors. It's Alan, the Comic Collector Geek, and these are the hottest Golden Age comics of the week. This is a special. I always try to make it a little different every time. I try to create little themes with the videos that I do. And this one, I'm actually looking at. I went to Heritage. I looked at what are the biggest sales that they've had this week. And I looked specifically at one genre, which was Precode horror. And I wanted to look at Precode horror because we had the COVID bump with pretty much the Silver Age, Bronze Age, and modern books. But Precode horror also got a big boost recently. And I wanted to see how is the market faring with these Golden Age Precode horror books that kind of were really hot a little bit after the COVID bump. And now this is a kind of a year later. Are they still hot? Are they still popular? So what I did is I basically organized it in terms of highest to lowest, or lowest to highest, I should say, where I looked at the top 10 biggest sales for Precode horror, and I wanted to see how they fared. So we'll get into the numbers and see how well these books performed. And there's some pretty surprising sales. So the first one is Terrifying Tales number 13. This is from June of 1953. It's an L.B. Cole cover. It's a devil cover. So lots of really cool elements to this one. It has L.B. Cole, if you ever look at his covers, you got to really look at them because there's just so many details. There's a woman on this one, but then you realize that when you look at her, there's like bondage on her. And if you look in the background, it just looks like black, but it's actually, there's like tribal people in it. It's just like so many little details that you just kind of have to stare at the cover to appreciate. So just a really cool cover. This was a pretty interesting sale. So this was a 5.0 that came up for sale. It sold for $1,560. Now this is actually down. This is a bit of a steal actually, because this book had just sold back in December of 2022 for $1,800. So it's down about $300, $240 to be exact, from the prior record. Now, was it a steal or was it just, who knows, or price correction? We don't really know. It's just a one-off sale. We'll see. We'll see how the market trends. You watch those trends. So this one's a little bit off that trend. It's a little bit down. So there are 63 of these on the census, and 55 of them are universal blue labels. But this one, definitely a very nice book. Would have been nice to pick up for that price. The next one on the list, number 9, is again Terrifying Tales, number 11. So a different issue. This is from January of 1953, and it is actually the first issue of the series. Even though it's number 11, it's actually the first issue of the series. Before it was called Startling Terror Tales, but this issue they changed the name to Terrifying Tales. This one was also used in The Parade of Pleasure, which is kind of similar to Soti. It's just another book. It's by Wagner, who is a British writer who was looking at American culture, not just comics, but American culture, and how it was a very negative influence on society in general. Bit of a anti-American book, but it looked at Hollywood, and it looked at comics as well, and it cited certain comics as being very negative in terms of their cultural influence. And it cited this book. It's also a skull cover. So a whole bunch of things going for this book. Very cool book. And it was a high grade that sold. It was a 7.0 that sold, and it sold for $1,680. And again, another L.B. Cole cover. The prior record for this book was set back in October of 2022. And it was for $1,002. It's $20, $1,020, and so it's up over almost $700 from the previous record. So huge increase, like 70%, 60 some odd percent increase in value. So pretty big sale. I'm so happy that I picked this book up before this sale. I would have been paying a lot more for my copy. There are 36 of these on the census, and all of them are universal blue labels. So a bit more rare than the previous Terrifying Tales, which had 63 on the census. So that could be another reason why this book had such a good sale. Number 8 on the list is Voodoo #2. This is from Pharrell, June of 1952. It's got Matt Baker art, not necessarily his cover, but Matt Baker art inside. It's actually a homage cover to Prize Comics from Prize Comics number 46. And this is kind of a cool book. It's a cool Precode horror book. It was a 5.5 that came up for sale, and it sold for $1,980. The previous record for this book was set back in September of 2021 for $1,920. So it's up slightly from a couple of years ago. Not a huge sale. I would have actually expected this one to sell for over the 2,000 mark, but it's just hovering around that prior sale. So I'd say this one wasn't quite as strong of a sale as you would expect. So a 5.5 for $1,980, not a big sale for this book. You always have to say for this book, because it depends on the book. That could be a big sale, right? There are 49 of these on the census, and 47 of them are universal blue labels. Number 7 on the list is Strange Suspense Stories number 19. Now, this is a classic book. This is a Charlatan 1954 Steve Ditko cover. It is like an electrocution cover. It is a cool book because you get, the guy is just like sweating bullets, and you can see every little fiber of his body just in some kind of stress. And the cover is hinting you don't know if he's going to be executed, even though he's an innocent man. It also features inside the interior, there's a man being buried alive. So just a whole bunch of cool things going for this book. It was a 4.5 that came up for sale, and it sold for $2,040. Well, that's actually down. The prior record for this book in a 4.5 was set back in February of 2022 for $2,160. So it's down slightly from that previous record. But this is a great book. This is I would say one of the top 3 electrocution covers from the Golden Age. So it is a great book. Didn't have a strong sale though. So there's 52 of these on the census, and 50 of them are universal blue labels. Number 6 on the list is Weird Tales from the Future. This is number 2, actually. This is from Aragon Publishing, and it's from 1952. It's a Basil Wolverton cover, and this one is one that I actually there's a couple things going for this book. So this is a jumping Jupiter. This is where Basil Wolverton, he creates the almost like early meme for jumping Jupiter, and it's just like this, like a satire of that, where it's like a big plant creature attacking a city, ripping it apart, and people running away from this giant plant creature. So it's kind of a cool cover. Basil Wolverton is really a very funky artist from the Golden Age. I would associate his art style much more with the underground comic scene of the 70s. But he was doing this back in the 50s, so way ahead of his time. Very cool artist. This was a 4.0 that sold for $2,040. The previous record for this book was $2,880, set back in February of this year. So yeah, so this is down a lot. Kind of surprising how much this one was down, because it's down like about 40% from the previous record. So that's pretty big drop. I'm not quite sure why it dropped so much, but definitely not a strong sale for this one. Now there could be a couple things. The overall market within comics is kind of weak. But there is also the summer effect, where a lot of the buyers that would normally pick up these books are on holidays or doing things where they're not buying comics. So usually during the summer is actually when you can pick up some pretty great deals. Summer and in January, when people spent all their money for Christmas, is another great time to pick up some really great deals. And somebody got a major steal on this one, because you would have expected it to go for around that $3,000 mark. So really great sale, 4.0 for $2,040. Definitely a steal, maybe the steal of the week. This was there's 67 of these on the census, and 63 of them are Universal Blue Labels. Number 5 on the list is Witchcraft number 5. This is from December of 1952. It's a Everett Raymond Kinsler cover, and I think it's his only horror cover. Actually, I think he didn't do many horror covers, so I think it's his only one that he's done. If anyone knows for certain about that, please comment in the comments below. But this has got a whole bunch of things going for it. It's got a good girl art feel to it. This girl is running basically through a field of skeletons, just like they're all like strewn across the cover. It's a green cover. It's very striking, and it's got this death witch like that's chasing after this girl, and it's the damsel in distress kind of look, girl in the red dress, and it's a classic cover, and it has the story Where the Zombies Walk. So a whole bunch of fun things for this book. This was a 6.5 that sold for $2,160. Now there are no prior records in a 6.0 for this book. This was in a no prior records for 6.5, which was this one. So there's no prior records that we can compare it to, but there was a 6.0 that sold in October of 2022 for $1,800. So I would say that this was kind of within what you would expect. So what you can do is, whenever you kind of want to guess what that other grade would sell for if one came available, is what you can do is you take the number like 1,800 and you divide it by 6, which was the one that you want to compare it to. So it works out to $300 per point. Well, 6.5, it works out to be an extra $150 for that 0.5 grade boost. So you would expect it to go for around $1,950. So this is up slightly from that, maybe a couple $100 more. So that means that it was a strong sale overall. So just something to do whenever you want to kind of calculate those books that don't have previous sales records. It's one of those tricks that you can use. Now the trick fails, by the way, after you get to a certain grade point. So usually in the 6s, there will be sort of more of a incline than the early. It won't be such a linear way of figuring out the values, because what happens is the rarity, the scarcity of the books really dramatically increases at those higher grades. There's a lot of low grade copies, but, well, not a lot, but more, they're much more common in low grade than in those high grades. So generally the prices can spike. So some books, there'll be even like only like a handful of copies at those high grades. So the price can be really, really high in terms of the curve. So just one thing to consider. This one, there's 78 of these on the census, and 74 of them are Universal Blue Labels. Number 4 on the list is Weird Mysteries number 5. This is from May of 1953. It's a Bernard Bailey cover, and it's a classic cover. I think I've even had this one on the list before, because it's an exposed brain cover. You got this like ape, it's like brains being lifted out, looks, or put in. I think it's being put in actually. And you know, it's a mad scientist, kind of like the Frankenstein like thing where they're putting the brain into this, you know, creature and making something come to life. Just a really cool book. So Bernard Bailey cover, but Basil Wolverton actually did a story inside of it. So his art is inside, where it's called The Swamp Monster. So extra kind of a cool artist also associated to this book. Now this was a 4.5 restored copy, and it was moderate restoration. So moderate restoration is when like there's actually a fair amount of restoration, which can really dramatically impact the price in a negative way. This one sold for $2,760. And we got to kind of, there are no prior records within that purple label. So I wanted to compare it to blue labels. Now this one fortunately has lots of sales, recent sales. There was, and it's all over the place. So there was a sale for one for $7,600. That was the most recent sale, and that was in July of this year. And then there was one in March of this year that sold for $9,452. So it's actually gone down. And then there was another sale back in November of last year that sold for $10,100. So this book has been kind of on a negative trajectory, it's like, which is kind of sad because, you know, it is a classic cover. I think people just overpaid, and then there's a bit of a correction for this book. So you would expect, based on the most recent sale, which was the $7,600 sale, that this one would sell for about 40 to 50% of that price, just based on the grade and the restoration. So if you do the math on that, you would expect it to sell for around $3,000 to $3,500, probably closer to that $3,500. So it's down even from that. This was actually a pretty down book, and that's the way it is. It is what it is. So somebody got a good price on this one. There are 75 of these on the census, and 70 of them are universal blue labels. So number 3 on the list is Weird Mysteries number 12. So a couple from the same series here. This is from September of 1954. It's another Bernard Bailey cover, and it's another classic cover. Like a lot of these Precode horror covers are just classic covers. This is the typical like husband grieving over his wife, and he's dug her up from the grave and he's holding her like, and she's like a skeleton. Just kind of a messed up cover, and that's what makes it a collector, very collector sought after book. This one is really interesting. It was a 4.5 that came up for sale, and it sold for $3,120. Now this book doesn't come up that often for sale. The prior record was set back in 2012, so like 11 years ago. And it sold for $155 back then. So it's gone up 3,000 times, 3,000 times in that time period. So yeah, it's gone up quite a lot, and that's actually a pretty huge increase even for that much time. So yeah, this was a pretty big sale. So $3,120, a new major record for this book. There are 40 of these on the census, and 36 of them are universal blue labels. Number 2 on the list is Crime Mysteries number 4. Now, probably by the title alone, you would say, well, why is this on the list? It's not Precode horror. Well, this title is interesting because though it is a crime comic, a lot of the covers in it like feature skulls on the cover, or like I believe it's number, I think it's number 10. That's a classic skull cover. A lot of them are really classic horror themed covers. So I put it on the list because it was a very interesting one. It's another Bernard Bailey cover, and he's a very sought after artist for Precode horror. This one's from September of 1954. Sorry, I'm mistaken. I read the wrong thing. It's not a Bernard Bailey. We're not sure who the artist is, but it does feature interior Frank Frazetta art. So it's not Bernard Bailey cover. Sorry, that was a mistake. I just read the wrong thing. But it's from 1952, from Ribbage, and it's a classic cover where it's this woman getting her blood drained. She's in bondage. You got the guy, like, you know, whenever there's like sort of bloodletting or like even blood on the cover, that's a big deal in the Golden Age. And when it's read, like, you know, even the most sensational comic from the Golden Age, where it's the guy where he's holding the head, crime suspense stories, and he's like holding the head and the axe. They didn't want to go too extreme with it, where the axe had red blood on it. They made the blood black, just because they didn't want to go too extreme. Well, this book has red blood. It's showing that she is getting her blood drained from her, and that gives it that classic horror feel. Okay, so this was a pretty big sale. This was a 6.0 that sold, and it sold for $6,000. Now, to give you a sense of how big of a sale this was, there was a sale for 6.5. There was no prior record for this book, but there was a 6.5 that sold for $3,162 in 2021. So only 2 years ago, a higher grade sold for almost half as much. So this book has really jumped up in value, and it's a very strong sale. So 29 of these are on the census, and 29 of them are Universal Blue Labels. Now, the number one sale, this was a really cool one. This is Startling Terror Tales number 11. Now, I've actually talked about this book in the past because it is just a classic LB Cole cover. You got the Death Spider, and it's in one set of arms. It is holding a dead man who looks like he's getting his life sucked out of him. And then in the other, you have the woman, the damsel in distress. She's still very much alive, but she is not in a good situation. So, classic Death Spider cover. Now, this is one where there's actually two versions of it. So it's Startling Terror Tales. Now, around the Startling, the original version of it, it's kind of almost like a print error, where the Startling was written with a black border. The problem with that black border is with the Tales. So the Startling is huge, and then Tales is kind of a smaller font. Well, the Tales gets kind of blended into that black border, and you can't really read it. So they realized the mistake, and then they reissued it with like a light blue around the Startling and the Tales, so you can read the tail part, so you can actually read the title. Now, this one that came up for sale was one with the black border. It was a 4.0 that sold, and it sold for $10,800. Now, the black border is really essential to the value of this book because if you look at the census, there are not many with the black border. It doesn't actually, like the CGC census doesn't break out black border versus blue, the blue border. But if you, what I did was I actually looked through all the Go Collect sales, and I only saw, like, out of maybe 100 sales, I don't know, 50 sales, whatever it was, I only saw like 2 or 3 that were black border. So most of the books that are selling are the ones without the black border. I would say ballparking it, I would say maybe 1/10 of the books are the black border. So really rare version of this book. Now, there are no prior records for this book. So this sold for $10,800 for a 4.0. But it is a huge sale because normally in a 4.0, this book sells for around $5,000. The previous record was 5,200, and it was only set recently. So yeah, so this was a big sale, like double what the blue label version has sold for. So if you ever buy a Startling Terror Tales number 11, look for that black border because it is a much more rare version of the book. There are 110 of these on the census, and 99 of them are universal blue labels. So just a really incredible sale. The black logo variant. So one of the first early variant covers that you have to look for. Some people call it a printing error, some people call it a variant, so I call it a variant. So again, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. And I'd actually like to find out if you enjoyed this format, where I look at highest to lowest, or lowest to highest, I should say, and just pick a theme, like one specific thing. Could be like horror, it could be good girl, it could be, you know, whatever. You know, crime, superhero, Marvel, you know, whatever it is. Do you like that, or do you prefer when I just pick the hottest books and then rank them based on which had the biggest sales? So you tell me which format you like. I just like to hear people's opinions on that. And please remember to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. The likes really do help the channel grow because YouTube algorithm. So please remember to like the video. Thanks again for watching. Bye for now.